company we keep by the ones who circle.
Hi there, my
round
name's Tercy
pretending
Engelhardt,
it's
and I want to
fine.
welcome you to the Unreasonably Grateful podcast, Living in Grace by Choice. So every week I tell you, no matter how you got here, trust that. Whether it was a friend, it just popped up on your feed for some reason, however you happen to be sitting where you are right now, listening or maybe watching, just trust that you are exactly where you need to be. And something may be said today, not like I have your answers because I don't, but sometimes we'll hear something said when somebody else shares with us their story or their journey, and it guides us to discovering our next step or our next answer for ourselves. Because really, while I say this podcast is about recovering off those broken pieces of yourself, becoming more of who you were designed to be, sometimes people don't relate to like, I'm in recovery, but I just suggest that we all are. We all have created this way that we are in the world as a response or reaction to the events and the circumstances of our life, but that there's another way to live. There's a way to live from that core, that center of who you are, where you have all of those divine qualities: kindness, generosity, love, devotion, patience, resilience, all that. And it may or may not be fully developed in you, but either way, this is an opportunity to develop those and to discover just how amazingly you are created. So, you can sign up on tercyengelhart.com if you'd like to have an individual opportunity to chat with me. I love when I see those on my calendar, and I love that I've connected to people and I know them in a deeper way. When we were in Texas, I saw a couple people that I've worked with over the past year, and I can still hear, it's so great to see you in person. And I felt exactly the same way. So you can sign up there. And if that's something you're interested in, it's on a donation basis. And this particular episode is called What's Your Gift? And yes, you do have a gift. You have been gifted. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to give you a few examples. So my daughter, she, drew paintings or drawings when she was a little kid, and she never liked them. And there was this one particular drawing sketch of a tricycle that I always loved. It was just, I don't know, there was something so amazing about it. It was, just like an odd position. It was just so creative. And I held on to it for a long time. It was big, it was like poster size. And when we left California a couple of years ago, and I was cleaning out everything, I found it. And I'd asked her in the past if she wanted it, and she'd never just said she did. So I held on to it. And this time she said she would. And she began, before that, this didn't have to do with that, but she had started to discover that she was, in fact, like gifted as an artist. And she discovered in her 40s that she loved watercolors. And in fact, I have one of her cards right here. She makes cards. This is one of the cards. And I love these, and I sell them here in our farm store. And my windowsill in my kitchen is full of them. And it's not just a mom's enthusiasm and excitement for their child's artwork. It's not just that. Certainly, there's an element of that. But what I love about that is that she discovered a gift, something that she'd shied away from most of her life. She actually believed there was nothing creative about her, and she's actually very, very creative. And that's that place that sometimes we can hold as a mentor, as a friend, as a parent, as a boss, as a coworker. Is sometimes we can hold a space knowing that someone possesses a quality until they themselves actually have that experience. So I suggest that each of you know people in your life that you see as better than they see themselves. You see them as kinder, more generous, more patient, more loving. You see them as creative, devoted. And I'm requesting that you never give up on holding that space for them and even projecting it outward, encouraging them, acknowledging them, calling them out for those qualities, because that's often how we discover our gifting is somebody else can see it in us before we can see it in ourselves. And so that's part of this week's message is for each and every one of you to look at the people in your life and to make sure that you're taking the time to acknowledge and appreciate the qualities that you see in them so that they too may one day be able to step into a gifting that perhaps they've shied away, denied, or even been afraid of. Okay. So that's one example. Another example is in my own life. You know, we lived in the city above a big central kitchen. We ran a plant-based restaurant company, and turns out I'm actually gifted at making cheese. There's an art and there's a science to that, and now I've kind of taken that art and science from cheese to ice cream. And this morning I was just thinking about this buttermilk that we used to get in Pennsylvania. My mother-in-law would go pick it up at a local dairy, and I was thinking about, you know what? For a while back in California, we started something called Buttermilk Revival, and we had a label made, and it never really took off. But then raw dairy in California never really took off because it's actually illegal. So I had to always do it under, through a cow share or under the table. But here I get a license and I can do raw dairy. So I was thinking this morning about that. But that mixture of art and science. My sister, who's in her 70s as well, I was just reading some of her text this morning. We text each other. And I had this thought, and I reached out to her about, you should do some nature writing. You should do poetry or short stories. She's so good at describing things. In fact, I'll read you something that she wrote this morning or the other morning, because it just goes to show like sometimes other people are more aware of the gift that we have. So this just was a short note, but she was saying, thanking me for the note that I sent her. And she says, I get up really early because it starts to feel as if my day's already half over. Sweet love to all your cows. I used to think of Tabitha as my therapist. I never really had a real one, with my head against her flank. So that's her talking about a dairy cow that she had for a while. Another one is, have a sweet day, gloomy and rainy here today, but I have cardinals and indigo buntings visiting the feeder to keep me company. Such sweet delights. So anyway, I'd love to see her writing a short story or poetry or just even journal entries, something that will be left behind in our memory that other people will enjoy. So that's how I see a gifting. See, I think sometimes when we're younger, maybe we know that we're gifted in something, but we're focused on making a living. And so oftentimes gifts are set aside because the conversation is, well, I can't make any money doing that. And so we don't pursue it. And then we're left with, oh, yeah, well, I'm not really that good at that. I had a greeting card company once, and I'm not particularly a great writer, and yet I am intuitive. And I remember getting up and sitting at it was a typewriter then, sitting at a typewriter and just getting still and letting these messages come through and me writing them down. And oftentimes after I'd written them down, I'd read them and I felt as if I was hearing them for the very first time, because I was more of a vessel for the message than it was my own words. So that's another way that a gifting might show up. Or one time I was at a birth, and, once the baby's born, all the attention goes to the baby. And yet I noticed that the mom wasn't doing that great, and there was a nurse over there. And so I went over, and she started talking to me and asked me to do something, and I did it. And I realized, she said, you'd have been a really great EMT. And again, somebody else plants a seed. And I've often thought, if I'd have known that earlier, I might have pursued it. But I'm actually really great in medical emergencies. I just don't panic, and I kind of more see what there is to do rather than get caught in the emotions or the trauma or the crisis or the chaos of it. So that's the other side of this week's work, which is I want you to look at your own gifting. I want you to look at where it is that you've had this experience of feeling lit up about something, and consider that there's probably a gift in there. A local masseuse was telling me the other day, like, I'm really creative. I know that I have to keep my mind creating. So that's a hint, that's a clue, that's an indication that there's some gifting there. And stay out of the, well, I can't make any money, or it's not a decent living, or stay out of that. Just stick with, what is it that lights you up? And you've heard people say this, I'd do it whether I made money or not, but it's so hard to think about, yeah, I'd do this whether I made money or not, when you're still caught up in, but I need to create or make a living. But I want you to just set that aside right now. I'm more interested in, what is it? What is it that can be a legacy that you leave behind? Maybe you were or are a doctor or a lawyer, or something that's not necessarily in the realm of where your gifting is, but it is what you did, and you did it well, or you do it well, and you've earned a living, or you're earning a living. But there's still something else. There's something that lights you up, that resonates with that core of who you are, that brings out the best in you. And that's what I want you to explore and discover. And write it down or share it with me. Put it in the comments. Start a chat line. Everybody can share in it. But I want you to start to look at that area of your life and look at, how can you exercise it? How can you develop it? Exercising is developing, right? How can you develop that? It's like, you guys know I'm watching baseball, and even though the Dodgers aren't doing that great right now, but then a couple other teams lost a few games too recently. But when I watch and I listen and I hear the interviews and I hear the coach talk, and they talk about the hardships that these kids or young men have gone through to get to like this level of elite performance, to be in the major leagues. And there's these two brothers, and I think that, they left Cuba, they escaped Cuba, went to the Dominican Republic. From there, they went to Panama. Then they ended up in Haiti. They were kept in a room for like, I think, a couple months. And then somebody opened the door one day and said, okay, you're free to go. Your paperwork's cleared. And they went from there. Maybe they went to Haiti before Panama. Then they went from there to Panama. And they ended up getting in front of some scouts. And now they're in the major leagues. So again, all those hardships, all those difficulties, we've just finished talking about how we get tested. You'll be tested in pursuing and activating your gift. But a gifting is a calling. And if you keep listening and you keep exercising it, you keep developing it, it will get stronger and stronger. And pretty soon you won't be able to ignore it. And you'll discover that there's something for you to create, to do, to focus on, to be, that will actually be a part of the legacy that you leave behind. A remembrance. This is how I think of a legacy. A remembrance for the life that you lived by the people that will live after you, generations after you. So that's what I want you to do this week. Okay. And then I will be here next week, and I can't wait to see you then. And in the meantime, have a beautiful, beautiful week.
In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love.